Hi, Welsh Dragon Metals here. Today I'll be tearing apart an old drone of mine. This is the H8C, quite good drone, but I have flown it to death. That mark there is from where it flew into a goalpost during a race over the race cars. And it has also flown in the Beast from the East blizzard around a neolithic hill fort at night over my city, making people exclaim UFO UFO. So it has some history to it, and I have flown it to death. It's also been modified and broken several times inside and out, as you can see. So it should be an easy teardown. Little thing has history. So I've got a little camera here, some components inside of that, Cmos Chip, along with some others most likely, tiny little screws upon it. Can I fit to get them? The screwdriver might not cut it. This may have in fact been opened before. It's very fragile plastic, however, probably just be able to break it apart. Yeah. Probably I can feel it going on the side. Very brittle, crappy Chinese sort of plastic material, very thin, not very tough at all, as you can see. Just sort of peel it apart with my hands. Well, I'm quite strong, but still, shouldn't do that. Because it's of a low quality, these drones don't cost much, but they are quite good. I recommend them. While they are built to fly themselves to death, by that I mean the engines themselves, built to burn out. There's far too much energy pumping through the boards. As you can see, I've been in here before. There's a bit of blue tack holding the SD card in place. Obviously it was faulty. So there's a Cmos chip inside of that little camera part by there. They have gold upon them. You can check that out on my Instagram. I have images of Cmos chips up close at 30 and 60 magnification. So there's a gold plated microphone here for picking up audio. And there's a chip, a timing crystal, which may have gold or silver within it. Some solder, and these little brown things, which are palladium on a small amount inside of them. Solder on the connection itself here, on the wires. Solder contains small amounts of tin and antimony, possibly. So there's some silver if it's high grade electronics. Possibly gold inside of this here, inside of this sheath for the SD card. Let's have a quick look. Probably is, if I remember correctly. And indeed that is, and a very small spring. These connectors are gold plated, as you can see there. Try and focus on that a bit better for you. There we go. As you can see, these connectors here are gold plated. So good material on the camera alone. Lots of bits from this. Let's go into the drone itself now. So I'll take the legs off first, in order to make it easier to access the rest of the drone. There's also some very small drone screws here. These are also used in things like watches and watch repairs, due to they're very fine. I believe I've lost these legs once or twice as well, in fields and such. Good in races. As I mentioned, this is quite an old drone, good few years old. Oh, that screw's well stuck then. Scratch myself a bit tearing that camera up. Happens, especially with a teardown. Sort of brittle, low quality crappy plastic material. Coming onto this screw. Try to take a screwdriver, maybe it's a different thread. No. Don't believe that's going to come out decent. Oh, never mind. No battery inside of the compartment. And there's screws inside of each connecting port here, each screw port. Probably quite loose as I've been in this before. There are lots of small screws around the engine ports and so. Many should be loose, however. As I've repaired this many times, in an attempt to make it fly for longer. Very brittle plastic, might just be worth snapping off the casing itself. These props also have screws upon them, loose screws. Should have probably took the props off beforehand. These have smacked into many different things and are no longer useful. Screw it. What? I'm going to get some better pliers and just tear it to pieces. Much easier. Proper tools. So as I said, brittle plastic. Should pull apart quite easily. See the circuit board inside, quite nice. This thing out, nice. Look at that. Pulls apart quite easily. The plastic is really brittle. Not good plastic. You can see the PCB board now exposed. Nice and crackly. There are also some LED strips within here, which I will remove. Showed in the beginning of the video, this has already sustained massive amounts of damage, so I should probably just tear into it anyway. These are bearings for the rotors themselves. They can actually be quite valuable and useful. Seen them for sale around the internet. Drone repairs. Here we have an LED strip. These are multicolour at that. Each one is a different colour, blue and red. And they are quite funky and programmed to light up in different ways. Pliers are stuck. Do recommend a good pair of plumber's pliers. These are plumber's pliers for doing this sort of thing, for which they are quite good. Some of these rotors are still stuck on. That's the ones with the screws. Some of them have large thick screws, or ones that I don't have the screwdriver for, or the thread is completely chewed away on them, as I've noticed with some of these things. I'll just snip the plastic right off of there if I can. There we go. These motors are all burned out, but they're a good source of copper, and there's also a brass gearing on the top. That is quite useful. Lots of components here, including a modified engine that I appear to put a JST connector upon. That's a JST connector there. As I said, I have modified this quite significantly over the time that I have had it. It was a good drone. Served its time. And I fly really aggressively, so. That rotor just disintegrated upon the shaft. There we go. So, lots of interesting components gathering hut here. Again, another rotor. These are all damaged beyond repair. A lot of them are nasty. These bearings, these gearings, and the bits on the motors, along with the small amount of copper contained within each motor. Small amount of value to it. But this is where most of the value lies, which would be the main PCB, or the Avionics, which would be the Avionics board itself. Probably programmed via Arduino coding or Code++. You know, because I've actually programmed these before. Reprogram. That's another story. I have a board here. That's a switchboard. Good condition. Some solder on the back. So some good material there. Big pile of plastic. We have lots of LED boards here. Tear these off. 1, 2, 3. So we got 3 more LED strips. These are all 5 volt. So easy to source that sort of power. Single lithium ion battery, salvage from a laptop or some such. Perfect. Even an old torch battery. There's lots of connectors and JST connectors on here from where I've modified it and welded it. Better battery connectors and such, but it doesn't work. I've screwed the avionics up from flying it to death and hitting it into several hundred different things. So, well, it has a history. That history is of flying it like a maniac. But it was quite fun. These cheap drones don't cost much, worth it for what little time that they last, and they fly really high speeds. So let's have a little look at these circuit boards. What do we have? So we have a nice circuit board here, lots of material, a couple of blocking diodes here. These black things, these contain tantalum. I have a video upon tantalum and some knowledge about it, metal torque. There's a timing crystal, see that thing there? That contains silver. I also have a video upon that and how much silver is inside of each of them. Those little brown things in the center of the screen contain palladium, and the ones with numbers on them, very trace amounts of ruthenium, osmium, and what is it? Another precious metal, rhodium. That's it. So you need a hell of a lot of them in order to get any amount of that. There's only trace amounts in electronics, but if you manage to get virtually any, it's infinitely valuable material. Got a capacitor there, it's probably silver coated, usually on the legs and the body, and the rest is pure aluminium. Got a MOSFET or a transistor there, I'm not sure which. Most likely a MOSFET for driving the motors, for a motor driver. Switching the electronic speed control, and that would be a microcontroller there, that small square in the center of the screen. Just basically a miniature computer. There's all the controls, receives and such. Another one here. That is likely for serial uploads, for uploading via USB cable. You can actually code these to do other things. Yep, that is, I can tell, because that TX there means it's for transmitting data to. If it had RX, which should be somewhere on this board, if not, it's right next to that. That would be for uploading data into the chip and programming this thing. There's a orange thing there, an orange yellow thing at the top. That is in fact again a tantalum capacitor. This thing here, very small. Seems to be soldered in an odd way. Also some transistors, those things. And some larger resistors and more palladium. The chips contain small amounts of gold, palladium in the small brown things, the MLCCs, some more rare metals in trace amounts, and silver and antimony and tin in alloy form within the solder. Remind you, there was also the camera board there with the Cmos chip, and more palladium and copper and other materials, gold plated materials, and the switchboard, along with lots of motors and connectors, JST connectors. A lot of these will be repurposed and recovered for resale or reuse. Some copper inside of the motors, and these gearings and cogs are actually worth a little bit, especially if sold in job lots. So, good salvage from that drone today, and I'll see you in the next teardown.